Okay, I think we are live. Hello everyone. I'm really excited about today's session. I'm Vani Kola from Kalari Capital, and this series of Play Forward focused on learning from stalwarts in the Indian gaming ecosystem, both founders, investors, and taking insights from them so that the ecosystem can collectively grow and shape up. And this series has been fantastic in terms of the purpose for hopefully accelerating our Indian opportunity. And today I'm really excited to have our good friend Kai, who's a partner at Courtside Ventures, a US-based early stage fund. He'll tell more about their focus and their investment strategy, but they've been fantastic partners to many Indian founders, and they've also been a great collaborator with other local investors. We have enjoyed working with them in a couple of our portfolio companies. Welcome, Kai. It's really great to have you here, and I appreciate you taking the time for our audience members so that they can take meaningful insights and inspiration from you today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to join and to share some insights with everyone.
I want to come back a little later to this notion of India, a gaming nation. But before that, I just kind of want to get introduction from you, Kai, on your background, which I know has deep experience in the gaming industry, also what Courtside does, as well as you're a global investor, and there is plenty of opportunity around the world. Yet you have been spending time being involved in the Indian gaming opportunities, mentoring those founders, and you've been excited about it. And so the question is why? So let's just start with that, and then we can go into other deeper questions.
Sure. So a little bit on my background. I'm a 3-time founder. Started 2 game studios in an interactive sports company. Courtside is an early stage venture fund. We invest in the seed, pre-seed, and Series A for startups in sports and gaming. So we have a very maniacal focus, very tight focus on what we do. And we only invest in a couple of areas where we think we add a lot of value and we have, deep insights and expertise. We invest globally. So we've done deals in Brazil, Nigeria, India, US, and Western Europe. We've recently, over the last 2 funds, been very much focused on the gaming ecosystem in India. Represents a very unique opportunity in terms of audience, engagement, and passion. And so, we're very excited to have the opportunity to partner with you and the Kalari Capital team on multiple investments. And we anticipate that investment to continue over the next several funds.
So Kai, I think the way I think about Indian gaming opportunity is as, just early to market right now with explosive opportunity ahead. And hence, we have a great moment to learn from more mature industries. And you have seen gaming industries develop across the world. So what can Indian founders learn, just foundational principles of building great gaming companies?
Yeah, I think when you look at gaming as a startup, gaming is always the most difficult area of investment because there's an art and a science. And, many startups, you can look at early KPIs and traction and engagement. But when you start with gaming, you're really looking at a vision around entertainment, around fun, right? You're not just solving. Many times we look at startups as, problem solution. And that's not the case with gaming. Gaming is about creating engaging experiences that captivate someone, that get them engaged from a passion standpoint. And so when I think about, what makes the a great gaming startup, there's an opportunity to capture a cultural zeitgeist, the opportunity to engage someone at a passion level. And so oftentimes it's very hard for founders to raise capital or to, prove that my vision for entertainment, for experiences, for this passion are there. And so I think there's a certain resiliency that comes with this that's required to get past the early stages where people can't necessarily understand what you're trying to accomplish as a gaming founder. And so, one of the factors we look at, when we talk about and we evaluate gaming startups is how do you articulate, how do you drive an engagement paradigm around passion? And that's a very challenging problem to face, but it requires additional time. It requires more than just a pitch deck, right? You have to really dive in and create the visuals and show people exactly what you're trying to create.
So what does Courtside say yes to, and what do you say no to in terms of how do you evaluate companies, right?
Yeah. In the gaming ecosystem, oftentimes, we are looking at how do we take our expertise in a Western market and apply it to other markets, right? It's not that every market is the same, because markets are very different. And what drives that passion that I was talking about is very different. But, we look for individuals who have specific domain expertise that they have insights, right, around an ecosystem, insights around engagement that we don't have. And if there's an opportunity for us to evaluate metrics that we've seen in another market and how they apply in the India ecosystem, is a key part of how we evaluate. So, one of the investments that we've done in the India ecosystem is Winzo. It's an investment we've done together. We spent years. I had a real money gaming company in 2010 in the US, right? And so there was a very deep understanding of what are the unit economics, what is engagement, what is best of breed kind of retention look like along the way, and can we help? Can we help raise capital, right? Can we help with onboarding talent? And so one of the biggest areas for us as a fund is this a good investment? But we will not invest in something if we don't think we cannot add value and help along the way. And so that's a critical component for us when we look at investing in the India ecosystem.
So Kai, Indian gaming company for India, Indian gaming company for the world.
Yep.
Could you comment on those two go-to-market approaches?
Sure. I think one of the things that makes India unique, obviously, is the population, right? And the size of the market. And so we look at, founders who are building for the India ecosystem. It is a large enough audience size and population that's self-sustainable. But I think when we see the next phase, right, or the next growth around the India ecosystem as it pertains to IP, as it pertains to gaming, it will be global, right? And I think that will be something that's very organic from those engagement experiences. In some cases, when you develop IP is very much focused on a particular region and an area along the way. But, what makes, what is a great story, right? What is great IP? That is actually something that transcends borders and cultures, right? It's something that people want to engage in and learn from. And so I think that we're right at the precipice in the India ecosystem of what will be a native India IP that has global appeal. But oftentimes I think that there's an appetite to push as fast as someone can to go global. And it has to be something that works organically and something that's natural, that moves along into international kind of approach. So for me, I think that it's the time will come, but today, for the most part, we look at investing in India and see the population, the engagement, and the TAM as a large enough opportunity. And when the time is right, that those opportunities will present itself, and it will certainly go global.
As we continue to talk, I will try and see if we can also engage the audience. Hi, guys. If you have questions for Kai, please put it down, and I'll try and see if you can get him to comment on it. But one question from Suresh is gaming and NFT. Can you comment?
Sure.
Is anybody still investing in that? Do you believe in it? What do you think?
I think that the NFT market was incredibly hot, right? It had a moment in time where we saw this massive, spike in engagement. And, when we think about investing in, if you look at the last 20 years of gaming, right? Every single multi-billion-dollar outcome in the startup ecosystem has come at the intersection of a new form of distribution and a new form of monetization. So you had console games sold at retail for $60. And then we moved into a PC gaming era, and you had Facebook gaming coming with microtransactions. You moved from console to PC, you moved from $60 up front to a microtransaction. And then you moved into the world of mobile gaming. So App Store distribution, SMS links for Android, side loading. And then you had IAP. And so what made Web3 interesting and compelling is you have all of those ingredients with blockchain as a form of distribution and NFTs and crypto as a form of monetization. What was different about this transformation is that you went from 10 million or 15 million consoles into hundreds of millions of PCs into billions of phones. And when you introduced NFTs in Web3, you were looking at hundreds of thousands or maybe a million or low single digit millions wallets that were available for people to purchase with. And so it's very hard to look at the investment opportunity as one that would transcend and become as large and have outcomes that were that fast. That being said, I think I am still fundamentally a believer that if you look at, $500 million of, digital assets being sold in a game in a matter of minutes that you do not own, that users will want to see ownership in their gaming ecosystems. But the friction that is presented today, because everything is so siloed, the inability to move items around, right? This kind of long-term vision around taking a piece of a digital IP, an NFT, an asset, and moving it between games represents a very real opportunity. And so, at this moment in time, I think it's a very difficult and hard part of the ecosystem to invest in, but the long-term potential is still there. And, there's a patience that's required, and it's hard because everybody's looking at growth metrics and engagement to continue to sustain funding. But I think long-term, still a believer in the world of Web3 in terms of distribution and monetization, in terms of asset ownership. But right now, the market is incredibly difficult. You're seeing dollars being pulled left and right, and very few investments being made in the space.
So you mentioned Winzo, obviously an RMZ company, and you have also invested with us recently in another company, and you have also done 4 or 5 investments in India. So what's your other than RMG, where the monetization is quite clear, where are you in your thought process on this question of Indian gaming companies being able to monetize, which is the biggest question I think every founder, when they go for funding, they face that. How are you going to monetize? So
Yep.
yet you have been quite active. So what is your insight and thought process on this?
Yeah, ventures, as is startups, timing is everything. And so you want to be just out in front, but not too far ahead in terms of how you're looking at investments. And so when we evaluate the India ecosystem and we think about monetization, there are certain key indicators that we're starting to see, even outside of in-app purchases, right? The tipping economy is an example of this in the streaming ecosystem, where you're starting to see, tens of millions of dollars being, presented to the creators. The world of traditional monetization in gaming, either upfront payment for a console game, in-app purchases, or then tipping around the streaming ecosystem. We're starting to see the indications, right? And every year people always say, well, when is monetization going to happen at scale in India? When is it going to happen outside of RMG, right? Which we've seen, huge examples of already, and spend happening. And so you're seeing more willingness from the app stores to open up and present opportunities for engagement and monetization there. But we've seen IP from other regions, the Free Fires, right, coming in and making hundreds of millions of dollars. I think there's a balance of, how good is your IP? People are willing to spend money on quality IP and experiences. And we're starting to see now, after years of, game studios being developed in India, that the quality of the content, the quality of the experiences will justify spend, right, on games. And so I think that we're right there at the precipice of that. And, we're going to see in the next 3 to 5 years a transformative, and very meaningful amount of capital spent inside of the gaming ecosystem in India.
So thank you for that. Going back into another question, AR combat gaming. This is a question from Serena asking you to comment on that, and also advise on the tech stack for that.
I have to say, I have not been a huge fan of AR and augmented reality. When you look globally, there's really only one game that's actually taken off. And Niantic's done a great job. But it was an existing IP that was very, very popular and very successful. And even the games that they have produced and tried to shift audience to go and engage, I was at Comcast Ventures prior to joining Courtside, and we released a Jurassic game on that as well. And, it was a top 50 game globally for, I think, 12 weeks. And then it dropped out of the top 100 and then dropped out of the top 1,000 in the next 6. And so, it's a very difficult market in AR because it requires spatial computing, tremendous IP, network effects to drive the value of the business. And so I think the next big AR game will likely be a game that has a tremendous IP that people love, and then has an extension from the core game into AR. But when you talk about what is necessary to create a network effect game that introduces physical and location, as a startup, it's a very, very difficult endeavor. And so it's either going to be a partnership with a big IP or an IP that's created from the ground up that is then introduced into the world.
No, that makes total sense. And while I think India has a lot of IP, of course, from our movie and entertainment arena, that hasn't really moved into gaming like some of the IP has, let's say in US, which brings to another question that Anul has, which is, while India has gaming companies, founders, developers, we haven't been able to produce high quality games compared to European studios. That's his comment. So what do Indian studios need to do to improve?
Yeah, it's fascinating. One is what we've seen over the last, 5 to 10 years in gaming is at one point in time in 2019 and 2021, that era, we were seeing $20 million seed rounds in game studios being done at an $80 million pre-money valuation, right?
Wow.
And you would see examples of this time and time again where there was a prototype and there was the hype around it. So AAA games had been funded, in Western Europe, in the US, and there's a tremendous amount of capital output that goes into creating those types of studios, right? So we haven't seen that happen, right, in the indie ecosystem. So some of it is resource, right? And we've also seen a correction and, kind of back to the mean on this. So you've seen large rounds get done in India, right? We've seen, the dream, sports of the world investments, but that's because there are solid unit economics that you can follow engagement and growth and monetization, right? And when we think about gaming, it's very simple. There's only 3 things that really matter in a game, right? It's cost of user acquisition, there's engagement and retention, and there's monetization. There's really only a small subset of metrics that matter, and they're very easy to see. And so when you've seen success stories in India, oftentimes we've seen them in real money gaming because there are very easy metrics to point to evaluate and invest behind. And, what we have not seen yet in the India ecosystem is a founder who has, come from AAA, high quality, US based, Riot or Epic or Take-Two come and sit down and say, we are going to develop an IP for the masses, mobile focused. And we're just starting to see some of those, right? And you've backed some and we've evaluated many where you're starting to see that quality. And what is required to grow a studio, right? I always tell founders, startups are hard, gaming is hard, gaming startups are exponentially harder. Right. And so the need to believe that you can deploy large amounts of capital to support these types of IP being built at scale is it's a person bet. It's a people bet as much as it is, backing metrics and data. And so I think, for this next phase of development in the India ecosystem, we're going to see the founders who have been operating for years now, who've had 5 years of experience, 7 years experience, 10 years of experience making games, and saying, I have a unique approach to a particular part of the market, and I'm going to go deep on that. And, I think there's, a round that was done, by Sequoia, maybe last year in a big, studio in India. We're starting to see the inklings of this.
Leela Games, is that what you're talking about? Yeah. And so Kai, from founders reaching out to you, right? What are the white spaces or what's the investment thesis now that you're really interested over the next 2 years? So whether they're building something now, they can reach out to you, or think about building that and reach out to you. What is your investment thesis for the next couple of years for Indian founders?
Yeah. So we invest in, we're looking at 3 areas. So studios that are creating original IP, mobile focused, right? Seed, pre-seed is one area. The second area is what we call social experiences and social gaming. What are the platforms and experiences that are driving engagement, right, around gaming? So there's one part of gaming, which is creating the studio. There's the other side around engagement. What are the unique experiences to connect and engage with gamers? And then the third bucket that we look at is infrastructure, right? What are the core tech tools, platforms that are interesting to develop, right, in these markets? We've seen a heavy amount of, regulatory and compliance, coming in around taxation in the India ecosystem, right? Are there geolocation services that make sense, right? There's a company in the US, Socure, it's worth $4 billion. We've seen GeoComply be a huge business, right? There are opportunities that we see that India, in terms of its makeup and its demographics, are there geo-compliant solutions? Are there, location services that are interesting around compliance as well? So infrastructure, social, IP, those are the three big buckets we're looking at when we look at the India ecosystem.
So Nischay has a question. I don't know if you want to take it or not. You did bring up regulation. He says, RMG and GST, how do you see the industry shaping?
Complicated question. I think
yeah.
I'll be delicate on this one, which is,
yeah.
When I was at Comcast Ventures in the US, we saw a similar regulatory environment shift, right? Where daily fantasy went into the fully regulated market. There was passport reform. And what you see with regulation oftentimes, and there was already regulation here, this is a tax shift, but the industry grows because of it, right? There's a stability around the ecosystem that gives investors confidence and, allows them to feel secure in investing in a regulated environment. And once the regulations are in place, it's much easier to understand exactly what is happening. Now, as it pertains to taxation and what we're seeing with GST, I think that there's a challenge to educating and getting the regulatory bodies in a place where there's a balance between what's right for the consumer, what's right for the industry in terms of the companies, and what's right for the legislative body. And we've seen this happen in the US, right? The taxation levels state by state have changed, right? One point in time in New York was 50% and it came back down. And so it's an ongoing conversation. I don't think it's the end, but this is kind of fine tuning an industry where there's real revenue and real growth. And, inevitably, I think, rational minds will prevail and we'll come out to a place where there's a good balance for the consumer, for the industry, and for the legislative branch as well.
So Kai, simple question from Balaji, I think. Your opinion on VR fitness?
VR fitness has been one of the, obviously, success stories in VR in terms of driving engagement and monetization. I think there's always a question of scale is the biggest challenge that you see with that industry. So you'll get really good engagement numbers, you'll get really good retention numbers and solid monetization off of a small set of users, right? You're not talking about hundreds of millions or billions of users. So the real question is, when do, the headsets come down to a price point where they're available for mass adoption and where you can monetize at scale? And once that happens, I think there's a really unique opportunity. I think the other side of the equation here is, who are the acquirers of those businesses? So you've seen some success stories in Meta acquiring, but, is Nike an acquirer? Is Under Armour an acquirer of these businesses? Where do they land over time? I think is going to be one of the bigger questions that we see with VR fitness. But I'm a huge fan. I think the engagement and entertainment value is there. And we've seen early success, but scale is the biggest problem.
Yeah, understood, especially in the context of India. That might be another question. So that leads me to mobile versus console. Maybe it's not versus, mobile or console. How do you think about those two in the context of India?
Yeah, look, I always say, mobile, people talk about mobile versus console. I just say, you have a console in your pocket at this point in time, right? Like when you started seeing early, PC gaming coming out, what you have available on this device is as powerful as a Windows 95, PC, right? And so it's staggering what the capabilities of the device are, from processing power and network access. For me, what makes mobile computing and mobile gaming particularly special is that it's inherently social, right? When you're playing a game on a phone, the first thing you think about is, how do I engage with someone else, right? So single player experiences versus multiplayer. So I think, we're very bullish on the mobile gaming ecosystem. The cost of development of IP for a mobile game is substantially lower than it is on a console game. The reach that you get, particularly in the India ecosystem, is much greater on a mobile device. And so, when we look at most investment opportunities, we think about, okay, what is the initial audience that you're reaching? How do you grow and scale? And then what are the additional platforms you can reach over time? And so we don't think of it as a, versus or an or, it's always an and. Because at some point in time, if you're creating a console game, you're going to want to go into mobile. If you're creating a mobile game, you're going to want to go into the console world. And so I think it's a symbiotic relationship, and it's just a matter of how you choose a platform. But in India, certainly the mobile console for us is the one to go after.
So with the rise of the mobile console, so to speak, and then just the gaming industry itself, how do you think about everything around it, like gaming accessories and things like that? Can that be a substantive market also, your opinion?
Yeah, we've done investments that are ancillary in gaming. And so when we think about, we invested in a company called Java, which is a PC marketplace where you can buy and sell, GPUs, accessories, keyboards, mice, etc. It's a massive industry, right? And everything's done on eBay today in the US, right? There's no dedicated marketplace for PC parts. In particular, people who want to, increase their CPU, their GPUs, continue to get a better gaming experience. And so I think what's interesting about gaming, is that we think of it oftentimes as a very binary industry. People create a studio. But it's actually much larger, right? And what it taps into. And you see a generation of kids that are growing up today, and their first experiences in social networks are in a virtual world, right? And, this idea of your avatar representing your identity, right? Your identity being online, your identity being inherently social. Gaming has opened up what is a series of social experiences for a different generation, a younger generation, that will be their first internet experience. And when you think through the lens of that, what it means from an identity standpoint, what it means from an experience standpoint, what it means from social, we are going to unlock new experiences along the way. And that's what's very exciting for us.
So Ram has a question, impact of AI on gaming.
Yeah. We're going to see, I think it's true of every industry, quite honestly, the AI is going to have a massive impact. And so, when we talk about it with regard to, gaming some, $200 billion annual business globally. And so, you'll see it, I think, in three areas that we believe will be big. One is, what are the tools and technology in development that are going in, right? So 2D to 3D asset conversion, you're going to see a lot of pre-production work that's gone in today by humans that will be done with AI. We think of AI, quite honestly, as a utility, right? I think a lot of times people get scared of AI and say it's going to replace jobs or, remove people from their jobs. We don't think that, right? I think AI is just another layer of software, and software increases productivity, right? And that's what the initial sort of B2B services were. So we think of AI and game development as productivity enhancement and services. I think you'll see them in social, right? In engagement. So looking at non-player characters, like the quality of NPCs that you're going to see come out with AI, and the engagement you'll have around them will increase. So we're looking a lot at those social experiences. And then, the actual game development itself, right? We've seen a lot of studios that, we can, have a anybody can make a game using our AI. I don't think we're big believers in that. But when you think about areas in the gaming ecosystem, like narrative content, right? The cost of production has been so high that you haven't seen great narrative content being done, because it looks like creating a movie, right? And it costs hundreds of millions of dollars. But with AI, can you create 7 different story endings, right? Can you create narrative-based IP that's going to be very popular? And what is the kind of balance between almost a movie-like production and a game and interactive experience is going to be really interesting. So yes, I think that we're right on the precipice of seeing AI transform industries and create new areas that we haven't seen be successful yet because the cost of content production is so high.
So, Kai, one last question. When founders go to investors, they talk about gaming opportunities being a hit-based business and also the patience that's required to be able to build a gaming company and whether that's a fit or not. And yet we are sitting at an inflection point. You believe that, I believe that. Hence, we have been massively meeting founders, trying to allocate investment and trying to accelerate through these conversations and all of that, right? We both want to be writing checks into the gaming industry because we believe it's at an inflection. So the question for founders, what should they be looking for from investors at different stages, right? And what is the sort of state of industry? How easy or difficult is it to find investments?
Yeah, I think, look, the state of the industry right now is very challenging, right? To be quite honest, there's a lot of allocation of capital that's gone in from LPs into GPs. There hasn't been a lot of DPI and capital flowing back in. So the bar is higher across the board for everyone involved. And so, just to be very clear, I think this is one of the most challenging markets that we've seen, in the last 15 years. But that being said, we are still bullish on gaming and we're still bullish on the venture ecosystem because I do think that individuals who have unique ideas and perspective on the gaming markets, particularly in large growing markets, will be successful. When we think about investing capital, it's inevitably about the founder, right? For us, gaming, as are most startups, but gaming startups in particular, are about the person. And, finding exceptional people to back and build a relationship with and talk about the vision. And so oftentimes our best deals and the deals that we like to do are not transactional and I'm raising money, I'm asking for capital, we're going out and doing a round, right? It is building a relationship. I come to India, multiple times a year, hope to be back soon. But here's a thought piece. Here's my perspective on the market. Here are my unique insights. I'd love to share them with you. Building a conversation so that I get to understand the mentality and the ideas behind the project. Because a project will change. IP will change. Distribution will change. Technology will change. But what remains a constant is the quality of the founder. Right. And their ability to navigate through the various turns along the way. And so, we look to build relationships with founders. One of the best deals that I've done, it took us 6 months before we invested, and I got an investor update every month along the way. And every single time, Amanda was like, this is where we're going. This is where we're going. And she hit her milestones and her metrics. And I said, we have to invest in this business. This person can keep going. And so I think taking a long-term approach to relationship building and sharing ideas and insights is the best way for us to get behind a founder and continue to back them over time.
Kai, I've really learned a lot and enjoyed every conversation I've had with you, including this one. I know you're very generous in sharing your deep learnings, and I think it's lucky for founders to have you be interested in their project and have you as a shareholder and an investor with them and help them grow. So we hope to see you back in India soon and do a lot more with the gaming industry. But thank you so much for taking the time this morning for you, evening for us, to be here, and appreciate your experiences and insights that you're bringing into the Indian gaming industry.
Always a pleasure. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
All right, take care, Kai. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. If you have more questions, put them down, and we'll see if we can answer them offline for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.